I want to talk a little bit about masks and we'll get into hand washing as well. The first thing I want to mention is that masks are not harmful to the wearer. So you can actually find anecdotal evidence arguing either position to this. You may have seen people say that it's harder for them to breathe while they're wearing masks, but alternatively, you can hear nurses or doctors talking about how they wear masks for hours on end. And in fact, people from other countries routinely wear masks in a similar way that we're being asked to, and they are obviously still alive and still breathing. But instead of going into that anecdotal evidence, I wanted to talk about some of the more chemical basis for the reason that masks are not harmful. So the composition of our atmosphere is actually predominantly nitrogen, and it's about 20% oxygen and a little bit of carbon dioxide. There's also some other gases involved, but these are the important ones, at least for this conversation. The air that we breathe out is very similar. The biggest change is the amount of carbon dioxide. There's a 100-fold increase in the amount of carbon dioxide, but the amount of oxygen hasn't really changed. Percentage-wise, it's about the same. However, the same as carbon dioxide. However, the relative percent is not as significant. Whereas carbon dioxide changes by 100-fold, oxygen does not change nearly that amount. Additionally, the mask is not sealed around our face. So there are areas where the carbon dioxide can escape from and oxygen can enter into. And so the composition of the air in between the mask and our mouth is probably closer to the percentage of the composition of the atmosphere rather than the direct air that we breathe out. And most people are not sealing the mask up around their face with duct tape. So most people can be pretty confident that their mask is not sealed completely. Finally, if we look at the sizes of the stuff involved here, the diameter of the pores in the cloth masks, so the holes between the fiber of the cloth, it's a little hard to find exact numbers, but it's between 80 and 500 micrometers. If you're not used to the metric system, I'll convert this to meters for you. That's a little bit more familiar. This is 8 times 10 to the negative fifth to 5 times 10 to the negative fourth meters. So really small pores. If you look closely though, you can see holes in some cloth masks. It depends what cloth you're using. So this seems small until we look at the diameter of these gas molecules, either the oxygen molecule or carbon dioxide. The oxygen molecule size is about 346 picometers. And so if we want to compare these, I'll convert this to micrometers. And this is 3.46 times 10 to the negative fourth micrometers. So much smaller than the pores of the cloth mask. If we continue this to meters, it's times 10 to the negative 10th, so very small. Carbon dioxide is again very similar, much smaller than the pores in the cloth mask. So one resource I like to use to look at is this scaleoftheuniverse.com. It kind of puts things into perspective, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. And so it's this website that if you look inside this viewer, you can see different items, and here is the size of the average human. If I were to scroll this bar to the right, I would see things larger than a human, and as I scroll it to the left, we will see things smaller than a human. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And as I scroll down, you can see some things that might be familiar to you. There's a matchstick, there's an egg, there's a square inch. And as we go down a little further, we are now getting to the range of the pores that are in the mask. So this little value here is telling you the scale of everything. And so this is about the scale that the spaces are in the mask. So if we go down further, and further and further and even further, and keep going smaller and smaller and smaller. There's a piece of DNA that's similar to stuff that I study. But if we go even smaller than that, and way down here, now we get to some atoms and molecules. And so here's a carbon atom, here's a water molecule. The oxygen atoms that we are breathing are two of these larger pieces of the water molecule. So water is H2O. These two little guys are the H, the hydrogen. This is the O, the oxygen. Two of these is the oxygen we breathe. Carbon dioxide is one carbon and two of those oxygen molecules. And now the sizes are going to be a little different because of how the electrons are spaced and shared, and that's way more chemistry than we need to go into for this. But as you can see, these are much, 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 much smaller than the pores that are, than the spaces in that mask. So these gas molecules are very freely able to go in and out of the cloth mask. And so it's not posing a health detriment to the wearer. However, masks are probably helpful to others. When I first was doing this, I was very convinced that masks were for sure helpful to other people. But as I dug into it a little bit, I realized that this is actually somewhat debated still. There's still being papers published to see how helpful they are and if they are helpful. But what we do know is that the coronavirus travels through water droplets, and these water droplets come primarily from our nose and mouth, just from us breathing as well as if we cough or sneeze. And so just a plug for basic scientific research, no one knew even a year ago that people studying water droplets coming out of our nose and mouth were going to have such a profound impact on our world today. But those people who were studying it a year ago are still studying it, and so are able to provide guidance on this stuff. So a plug for basic scientific research. You never know when something's going to be needed. But we don't know if we have COVID-19 or not. And so since it travels through water droplets, the mask can help block some of those water droplets. Again, because the masks are not sealed, some could get out, but it's going to block most of them. And I heard an analogy that I really like, and I'm going to pull in my son, Charlie. He's 1 year old, to kind of help with this analogy. So because Charlie is a baby, and he is not potty trained, we need to do something so that he does not get pee everywhere. If I were to wear a diaper, it would offer some protection to me. So this would be if I am wearing a mask to protect myself. It does offer some protection, but not a lot. However, when Charlie wears a diaper, it offers a lot of protection to me. It doesn't necessarily help him, but it helps me a lot. We don't get pee everywhere. And so this is kind of how masks are used. It's not necessarily protecting the person that's wearing it, it's protecting the people around them. And since you don't know if you have this disease or not, it's helpful to wear a mask so that you can protect other people around you. Just like Charlie wears a diaper to protect everyone around him. But what can you do to protect yourself? So masks are protect other people. What can you do to protect yourself? The main thing you can do is to wash your hands. This is the best way to protect yourself. And to get back into the structure of the coronavirus, the outside of it is composed of this thing called a lipid bilayer. And so this lipid bilayer is made up of molecules that have two parts to it. So up in the right-hand corner here is one of these molecules. The two parts are a part that hates water and a part that loves water. And so when these come together, it forms this spherical shape. Well, soap is structurally very similar. It also has a part that hates water and a part that loves water. And so it can come and disrupt this membrane because it can wedge itself in there and interact with these lipid molecules and disrupt the virus. And so when it does this, it pulls the virus away. It also pulls away dirt and oil from your skin. And then when you wash with soap and water, the water helps pull all of that away from your skin. And so soap is the best way to protect yourself. As a side note, antibacterial soap isn't going to add any extra benefit toward getting rid of the coronavirus. Antibacterial soap is to kill bacteria, and since the coronavirus is a virus and not a bacteria, antibacterial doesn't add any extra benefit. In fact, one of my mentors who studies bacteria isn't even sure if it helps with bacteria. He just recommends using regular soap. So soap is the best thing to do. Hand sanitizer is also helpful. It does a similar thing. Not quite as good as soap. Soap is the best, but hand sanitizer is still good, and it's much better than nothing. So wash your hands. Finally, I wanted to end on a little bit of a biblical perspective. And I wanted to pull this from the book of Philippians. This is probably my favorite book of the Bible. There's so much good stuff in it. But I just pulled out 3 different sections. The first one is to do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but count others more significant than yourselves and look toward the interests of others. And so even though masks are uncomfortable to me, it's not harmful to me, and it's probably helpful to other people. So I choose to wear masks to help other people. Again, other people might have different opinions, but that's my opinion. I want to help other people. I want to look out for their interests. Next, in Philippians 4, 6, and 7, it tells us to not be anxious about anything, but to let our requests be made known to God, and He will give us peace. So I'm hoping that these quick little blurbs about the biochemistry of the coronavirus are helping you to not be anxious about the virus. But also, I think it's important that we're not anxious about the recommendations made from our superiors. I choose to trust that God has the right people in place that are advising the people making decisions, and that they are making the right recommendations to keep both me and my loved ones safe. And then finally, Philippians also encourages us to do all things without grumbling or arguing, or grumbling or disputing. It's easy to be mad at people, especially if they disagree with what you think. But I think it's important that we don't grumble or dispute with that. Other versions say complaining or arguing, and this is a verse that my parents had us memorize when we were growing up, probably for obvious reasons. So I take this to think that we shouldn't complain or argue about these recommendations. And the reason for this is that so we can shine as lights in the world. I think this time is a great time for people who love Jesus to shine as lights, to be different, to not be anxious, to not complain or argue, and to think of others more significantly than ourselves. So I'm not an expert in everything, but if you have questions, please reach out to me. I can try to help you find answers if I don't know about it. But I do know a little bit about something, so I'm hoping to share that with you. And be safe and wash your hands.